There are moments when history ends quietly. No speeches, no heroes, no final defiant stand. Only consequences. Weeks ago, a single choice was made in a room full of powerful people who believed they were acting for the greater good. They mistook control for responsibility and fear for wisdom. Now the world no longer turns the way it should. The sky no longer remembers its stars, and the weight of that choice has come due. This is the final chapter of And Man Was a Vengeful Creation. This is When the World Unravels. Colin Michaels stood before the massive screens in the underground bunker. His reflection fractured across the shattered glass of the largest monitor. The man staring back at him was unrecognisable, hollow-eyed, gaunt, and drowning in the weight of something unspeakable. 4 weeks ago he'd pulled the trigger. 4 weeks ago he'd believed, no, known, that his actions would save the world. Now there was no world left to save. The bunker breathed panic. Officials murmured frantically, their voices bleeding together into white noise. The steel walls felt that they were closing in, as if the room itself was suffocating beneath the enormity of what was happening outside. Colin gripped the cold metal of the table before him, knuckles drained of colour. The monitors vomited forth an unrelenting tide of catastrophe. "Sir?" The trembling voice of Anthony Sterling cut through the haze. Colin turned slowly towards his private secretary. Sterling's hands, once steady, now shook beneath the weight of what he carried. A stack of reports that meant nothing anymore. "The Earth's rotation is slowing," Anthony whispered, his voice weak, unravelling. "It's barely perceptible now, but the acceleration," he swallowed hard, "is exponential, with days, maybe less." Colin barely heard him. He was watching the screens. On one, a Category 6 cyclone, a storm that should never have existed, devoured the Indian coastline. The sea surged inland, dragging entire cities into its depths. Europe was torn apart by tornadoes, their wild spirals stretching impossibly across the sky. In the Midwest, the land split open, vomiting magma, the earth hemorrhaging fire. Anthony's voice wavered. "Sir, the monarchs in California, millions of them, they just fell from the sky." He gripped the table beside Colin, breathing in short, shallow gasps. "It's not just physics," he whispered. "It's not just the planet. It's everything. The land, the creatures, the balance, ecological, spiritual. Everything's coming undone." Colin's gaze drifted to another screen, showing the sun, no longer golden, no longer a source of warmth. It was dying, a red ember, pulsing weakly. Yet another monitor flickered to life, revealing a wild-haired astronomer, his face pale with disbelief. "A galaxy, NGC 4414. It's gone." The man's voice trembled, as if speaking the words made them more real. Not collapsed, not consumed, just gone, like it never existed. He clawed his fingers through his hair, eyes flickering between his instruments and the void beyond. The data doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. A deep groan rippled through the bunker. Dust sifted from the ceiling. The steel walls moaned like a wounded animal. Even here, in the deepest heart of the earth, they were not safe. Anthony was still flipping numbly through reports, his eyes vacant. "Sir?" He exhaled shakily, his voice barely a whisper. "It's not just Earth. The entire universe is unravelling." Something inside Colin snapped. His breath caught. He turned his back on the screens. The Earth was cracking apart. Fire bled from its wounds. Above it, the sky darkened, not with clouds, but with something deeper, something wrong. One by one, the stars winked out, swallowed by the abyss. A silence fell. a silence too vast, too final. "Anthony?" Colin's voice was hoarse, barely there. How is this happening?" Anthony turned to him, his face pale, his eyes hollowed by something worse than fear. "It was him," he said. "The visitor." His voice cracked. "You saw what he could do. We all did." He swallowed. "You pulled the trigger, sir. You killed him." Colin flinched as if struck, but he didn't deny it. The memory rose up sharp and merciless, the visitor's piercing blue eyes meeting his in those final seconds, not with anger, nor with fear, but with sorrow. At the time, Colin had convinced himself it was a trick, some alien deception, but now, as the universe itself fell apart, doubt clawed at him like a living thing. The bunker shuddered violently. Colin stumbled, catching himself against the table. On the monitors, the Earth ruptured completely, its core exposed, molten rivers spiralling outwards as fragments of continents tumbled into the void. Anthony sank into a chair, hands covering his face. "I just want to go home," he whispered. "To my wife, my kids. I don't want to die here." Colin closed his eyes. What could he say? What good was leadership when there was nothing left to lead? The hum of the monitors faltered, the lights flickering, the tremors deepened, cracks slithered up the steel walls. On the largest screen, the Earth began to dissolve, not in an explosion, but as if it had never truly existed at all. Chunks of land floated away, weightless, vanishing into the abyss. Above it all, the void loomed, patient and eternal. Colin's knees buckled. He sank to the floor, trembling hands cradling his head. Around him, the bunker was no longer filled with frantic voices. There were no orders being given, no desperate strategies, only silence and prayers spoken to a God who was already dead. But in the stillness, something else stirred, a memory. Those eyes. The visitor's gaze locked with his in those final seconds. A voice, distant and faint. "You're supposed to do better." Colin let out a ragged breath. The weight of it crashed into him, a truth too terrible to bear. He'd not just killed a man, he'd ended everything. A sob tore from his throat. His shoulders shook violently. I thought... He choked on the words. "I thought I was saving us." The bunker convulsed. More dust, more cracks. The last monitor flickered. The sun dimmed to nothing. The final stars winked out, and then only darkness remained. Colin trembled. His fingers clenched against the cold floor. And as the universe exhaled its final breath, he did the only thing left to do. He wept. So it didn't end with fire, or judgment, or divine wrath. It ended with absence. The universe did not rage at its creators, it did not punish them, it simply let go. Perhaps that was always the truth the visitor tried to show them. Creation is not sustained by power, nor by fear, nor by control wrapped in the language of protection. It's sustained by care. And when that care is rejected, when creation becomes something to dominate rather than tend, there is nothing left to hold the shape of things together. Colin Michaels believed he was saving humanity, but humanity was never the point. The point was whether, given freedom, we could choose to be better. In the end, there were no villains standing over the ashes, no victors surveying the wreckage, only a man on his knees, weeping at the end of everything, finally understanding that some lines, once crossed, can never be stepped back over. This has been And Man Was a Vengeful Creation, a story about gods who leave, about humans who inherit the world, and about what happens when we prove we're not ready for either. Thank you for listening, and if there's one question worth carrying forward from the silence that follows, it's this: if given the world again, would we do any better?